Welcome back to the Naval News, everybody. Today, the Naval News comes at us from U.S. Naval Institute, USNI News. Go to usni.org for more news stories like this. This story is written by Mallory Shelbourne. She says the Navy's year-long continuing resolution would lead to a $500 million shortfall for the Columbia-class submarine. So real quick, a continuing resolution in the United States is when Congress can't agree on a budget for a new year because it's going to go up and make them look bad and all sorts of things. They just say, hey, why don't we take last year's budget and continue it for this year? And that way nobody looks bad and they get reelected. Anyway, so that's what they did. Problem is we have a lot of new shipbuilding coming online, a frigate class, a new submarine class like this Columbia class. And so the cost for this year are different than last year with the Navy and every other program too, service. But the Navy's like, hey, we're going to be short on this one program and we're going to go over some of the others that are short as well by $500 million unless we get a budget approved. So from the piece, Mallory writes, the Navy is facing a $500 million shortfall for its Columbia-class ballistic missile submarine program if the government is forced to operate under a year-long continuing resolution, a service official told reporters on Tuesday. The service Fiscal Management Director, Chief of Naval Operations, or N82, staff forecasted its list of ramifications for the Navy, ranging from decreased aircraft and weapons procurement to not giving sailors a raise if lawmakers pass a year-long continuing resolution for fiscal year 2022. Quote, on the industrial base, there is no ... sector that is not going to be impacted. So if you're in the ship construction business, you know, Columbia is going to receive about $500 million less money this year, says Rear Admiral John Gumbleton, the Navy's director or deputy assistant secretary for budget. He said at a conference with reporters, the Columbia-class program, which will replace the Ohio-class nuclear ballistic submarines, has long been described as the Navy's top acquisition priority and has little margin for error to start strategic defense patrols as the U.S. Ohio boat starts to leave service. So the Ohio boats are as old as the Ticonderogas. They've been around forever. And it's time for them to be retired and be replaced. And that's what's happening here, but we're not funding it. You know, we like these ideas, we begin these projects, and then nobody wants to spend the political capital to pay for them. Back to the piece. He says, that's our, number one priority program for the last several years with margins, where margins are tight. And here we are. We're going to fund it with less than $500 million to plan. So yes, that's very much potential to impact the schedule, Gumbleton said. Remember, this is the Admiral talking. Now we know the first boat's going to be delivered a few years out. So hopefully there'll be an opportunity to make this up. Hopefully we won't have a year-long continuing resolution and it's already stressed the low margin program. So that would not be positive. So he's saying that there's really no room to give in the budget if you don't pay for the construction continuing. The construction's already underway on the submarine. If they don't continue to pay for the increased cost, the schedule inevitably will be pushed back. And so they're trying to figure out, are they going to get more money or are they going to have to change the schedule? Or, what other cuts are they going to have to make? What things are not, what other programs are going to be impacted here? So let's talk about that. Back to the Admiral saying because of its new start, we would not be able to begin the new frigate. That's the new Constellation class, which is looking very promising. Some additional new starts are also the TAGOs, which is the support ships. There's going to be a sea lift ship that they're going to buy. 3 of them, they said, and 2 ship-to-shore connector ships. For those are all examples of things that are not going to happen unless they get this money. As far as on the aviation front, he continues, we've intended to buy 7 additional Joint Strike Fighters. You might need 8 now, Admiral. The 6 MQ-9 Predators for the Marine Corps and Advanced Force Plan initiatives. These things are not going to happen in a year-long continuing resolution. Right. If we don't get the extra money, we're not going to buy these planes. He continues on saying, then on the weapons front, it's a multiple weapons that have increased order quantity. whether we're talking about JASSMs, Evolved Sea Sparrows, Naval Strike Missiles, and so on. The list goes on. He lists them all here. He's not holding back. All these weapon systems and our industrial base are planning to buy or manufacturing for us. We're planning to have inventory, or not going to happen. We're not going to buy all this ammunition for our ships, all these missiles. So the Navy is looking at a $2.5 billion shortfall across all programs. Now, remember that $500 million is just for the Columbia. So the $2.5 billion shortfall in its operations and maintenance account because of its limited fiscal year 21 levels. Okay, so it looks like they might have done a continuing resolution last year as well, or they cut the budget, one or the other. It's not really clear right there, but either way, it wasn't enough money, they say, to do maintenance. And that would explain why we're seeing things like this on Fleet Tracker. Hold on. So maybe that's why whenever we see ships going to sea with all this rust on it, not like that one, this one right here, where paint is coming off this thing, and this is with a group that just went to sea recently. So either this happened, as soon as they went to sea, or they went to sea with the hull looking like this. One of those two is true, because we're not getting the money to afford what he calls maintenance and what else? Operations. Operations and maintenance are not being funded at current levels as of last year. And if we continue this year with the same levels, we're not going to have that same money again. So we're really out operating our budget. Like one of the things that they could do to kind of force this if they wanted to is only go to sea with the ships that are ready to go to sea. If a ship is got deferred maintenance, don't send him on patrol or on deployment until he gets the maintenance. And sometimes that deferred maintenance is deferred by a couple years. That will get people's attention. And that would either bring a light to one of the two problems. We would either not spend as much money, or we would begin reducing our deployments. Both of those, I think, would be great outcomes, because I do think we overdeploy our sailors and our equipment way too much. But if we're going to do it, let's spend the time and money maintaining them so we don't have ships that look like rust buckets. And it's not just an appearance thing. It's a capability thing. Rust is just one of many things that can go wrong underway. If the hull looks very rusty, imagine what the inside systems, what kind of maintenance are they not getting from high pressure airs and hydraulics, you name it. What you just see on the surface could just be an indication of what's really wrong with ships that are not properly maintained. This is what happened to the Soviet Union. Back to the piece. The Admiral says, this is Admiral Grumbleton we're quoting here. He says, I have directed our fleet maintenance to actually conduct your operation, speaking to Congress, as if we're not going to do the continuing resolution. Well, that's a poor decision. But what the Admiral's doing is he's continuing these deployments as if these ships are being maintained, saying, hey, we need the money. Give us the money. The ball's back in Congress's court now. Continuing with him, he says, we are not going to slow down. So I guess that's off the table right there. The Admiral's already made up his mind. And so that's why we're having this dramatic impact on our operations and maintenance. We should have that result come from the fruition, which sometime this April, for example. So therefore, our dramatic changes to absorb that $2.5 billion less value is we could have not to do these to work on those submarines, the 5 of them. So there's 5 submarines that need maintenance, and they need the money to do the maintenance on the submarines. Interesting. He talks in a very strange way. I know these are quotes of him saying things. I'm sure as he speaks, it probably makes more sense, but he uses words when he doesn't need to. So under the New START programs for fiscal year 2022, Gumbleton says the Navy has 10 research and development programs, 10 procurement programs, and 12 military construction projects that could not commence under a continuing resolution. That is a lot of programs we are funding. And that's a lot of programs we're going to be without if we don't get this money. So I'm afraid to even ask chat what they think, but we're kind of getting to that point. Let's see what the Admiral sums up. Here we go. We have a member of Congress coming in. So the House Armed Services Committee Vice Chair Representative Elaine Lorraine from Democrat Virginia recently said the budget negotiations for fiscal year 2022 are tied up in a very political fight of saying we need to maintain the spending levels of the last administration, i.e. we need to not put more in their social programs. But that's locking the Department of Defense at a point that they're at. But doing with the continuing resolution is disastrous. Okay, this is interesting coming from a Democrat, but she is from Virginia, where a lot of these shipyards are, that would get a lot of this money. She's kind of defending that, hey, we need to approve a budget that spends the money that required to maintain these ships. The other thing that nobody's talking about is maybe we don't deploy as often as we do, and maybe we don't have as many ships as we have. How about a little bit of reduction in our forces? That would save money if that's what you want. But nobody wants to do that. That's not even an option in the article. People don't even consider that, which is pretty amazing to me. All right, finally, we're going to wrap this up here with a quote from, I believe, yes, the Admiral. He says, quote, "The last thing we want to do is actually show how we can actually live with a continuing resolution that lasts 12 months. We absolutely don't want to do this. So to actually seek anomalies and workarounds for systems that are supposed to work so we can, again, maintain our strategic rivalry with China. Don't break trust with our sailors and Marines, and not disrupt the industrial base is incongruent," he says. So the Admiral's solution to work with no money instead of not deploying is to seek anomalies and workarounds. We had been doing that back when I was in the Navy. If you guys remember the 90s, after the fall of the Soviet Union, they scaled back a lot in terms of money with the budget cuts. And that really kind of didn't stop. It ebbs and flows a little bit, but we were working around a lot of things in the schedule and maintenance and whatnot. And that's going to be his new norm, because do you know what the one thing that he's not doing? He's not deploying the fleet. He's going to deploy the fleet as if the continuing resolution will not be continued. And that's from the Admiral's mouth. I think that is a very narrow-minded way of thinking. He needs to think of a workaround, like, I don't know, not going to sea until the ships are funded and maintained properly. And if that begins happening, then the people in Congress will have to make a decision. Do we fund this fleet, or do we decommission it? Do we shrink the size of it? Or do we just keep it in port? Yeah, maybe it's a fleet in port. I suppose that's an option as well. All right. Something that I wanted to point out to you guys is that, yeah, we're $500 million short on this Columbia class that's being built by General Dynamics and all that. But I want you to look at this. We can't afford a lot of what we're doing because we're paying private industry to build our ships in a lot of cases. And so the CEO of General Dynamics last year, where's it at? Gets a 6% raise from 2020 to 2021. Pay raise 6% to $19 million. And his five executives, not top executives, got a 9% increase in their pay. And this was in compensation. This is in addition to their salary. So there's another side of this entire piece that is never talked about, and that is our shipyards are for-profit corporations or companies. And they are absolutely banking millions of dollars at the executive level, for sure, as we see here. I mean, look at the chief financial officer of General Dynamics, who increased his compensation. This is on top of his base pay. His compensation was increased by 21%. So these guys are getting huge pay raises. Got to keep up with inflation, right? How many of you are getting pay raises like this? How many of you get a compensation package along with your salary, right? They tell you it's healthcare, but no, these guys are getting stock options, like cash value assets in addition to their pay. So this is the other side of that argument that I thought I would just bring to your attention, that not only can we increase the funding for these programs, we could also limit how much they pay themselves for building our submarines for us. This is one of the disadvantages we have in our system, is we have privately owned shipyards that are run for profit to build these amazing ships and submarines. And people like China and Russia, it's all state-owned. Doesn't make it more efficient, but it's not for profit. They would save themselves a few $1 million, you know. I just want to point that out. All right, let's see what chat thinks here. Yeah, he does have a golden parachute too. His parachute is over $290 million if the CEO leaves his position. So changing the CEOs rather, that never is the answer, because whenever they're brought on, when they're hired, they've already negotiated their departure. That's part of the hiring process now. Yeah. Yeah, no, exactly. That's no raise for sailors with continuing resolution. Sailors won't get their annual raise. And it's every year, all the military enlisted and officers usually get, 2 to 3%? It's something like that. And it's kind of a regular thing. It's not guaranteed, but you usually get some kind of raise. Yeah, that's not going to happen. But you know who is getting the raise? These guys. These guys getting their money first. Getting their money first. Yeah. Anyway, all right. This has been Naval News talking about the budget shortfall with the Columbia class. Thanks for watching, everybody. See you in the comments. All right.